Dave, are you on board tonight?
Yep.
Okay, good to have you. And how about Ron?
Yep, I'm here.
Ron, good to hear your voice. Larry? Okay, no Larry, not yet. How about Sam? All right, I see Sam. I don't hear Sam, so I'm going to say Sam is at least partially here, and that's a good thing. Let me see. How about Jay?
Present and accounted for.
Good, good, good. Megan?
Yes, sir.
Great. Good to have you. DeColo?
Yes, sir.
Welcome. Matthew, I see that Matthew is on board tonight. Thank you. And finally, how about Judith?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're all here tonight. So Edgar, I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over to you to begin the peer review. Last week was not as smooth as anybody would have hoped as far as doing the process, but just as a reminder, the peer review is basically to go ahead and go through your response to the DQ that you volunteered for and field any questions or comments from the cohort. Highly, highly recommend, in fact, I'm going to ask other members of the cohort to go ahead and provide feedback. Let's see if we can't get a little conversation going. And tonight's DQ is really a great conversation starter. I expect we can have some really lively and pertinent conversation on that subject. So on that note, Edgar, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter. And when you can go ahead and bring up your screen and share it with the class, we'll jump right in.
All right, give me a second. Let's see, just trying to download something real quick.
Okay. So we'll give it a moment to do that, and then we'll go ahead and get rolling. So let me ask you, cohort. And this doesn't go as smoothly as I think either one of us would anticipate. In your previous classes, have you experienced having the presentation passed on to you so you can present what's on your screen, or is this something new to the folks in the cohort?
This is Sam. Except for at the very end, we did present right at the very end when we did our project overviews, but that's the only time we did it.
Okay, not a problem. It is a little bit quirky the first time around, then it seems to get okay. So thanks for your patience. All right, hey, I can see Edgar's desktop. This is a good thing. So Edgar, if you want to go ahead and walk us through the DQ, go ahead and lead us through how you responded to it, certainly picking up any points from classes we've had to date and anything else that was of interest to you, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, so do you want me to read over the question again, or is it just fine if I just go through the question or the answer part?
Go ahead and roll us through the question and then jump into the answer if you don't mind.
All right, a company of 120 employees has a time accounting system. Employees must report their hours each day by 5 p.m. Payroll has indicated there has been an average of 75 late reports each month for the last 2 months. The company president instituted a new policy to improve on-time reporting statistics. When workers are late recording their time, the payroll department will provide their names to their bosses by 10 a.m. the next day. The bosses are to interview the person within 24 hours and establish why they were late in reporting. After the second occurrence in a month, the employees must provide a plan. Sorry, I just kind of lost my second because my screen keeps swapping on me for some reason. Provide a plan outlining what they will do to prevent this from happening again. A third violation will result in disciplinary action. So the main questions are, what are your thoughts on this procedure? What changes, if any, would you recommend for the payroll department and the procedures used by the bosses? And include theory of variation concepts in the response. Is everybody able to view the screen or no? Or did it go away?
Actually, it went away. Edgar, if you could jump back into that. So we're going to turn this into an learning evolution class. So just kind of see what's going on and keep in mind for when it is time to do your class presentations in week 5. Probably best to have them up and ready to go and be ready to present that way if we're not familiar with it.
I'm trying to figure out why it's not. Come on.
Okay, Edgar, I'm going to go ahead and show it on my screen, just in the interest of time. And let me see if I can see that. Yeah, let me blow that up just a little bit. I think I can do that. Okay, so we should have a good look at Edgar's DQ response. Go right ahead, please.
All right, so in my answer, I posted that the current process seems like a negative approach. It's something that I feel would bring the morale down for the employees, since employees already have a lot to deal with in their daily in their daily routines or work. They have rules to follow, work, and now they almost feel like someone's watching over their shoulder if they forget to clock in or report their hours. At the beginning, it might be okay. It might make people cognizant after the first or second time. But what happens if, like, the third time something actually happens and they have an emergency and they don't report the hours on time? Since time reporting is a norm, every job requires you to clock in one way or another. And so I added that the only way change will happen is when it can only be reduced by making fundamental changes to the inputs or transformation of the process, as discussed in, I believe it was last week's class. It's almost like when someone leaves for work in the morning and you usually grab your keys from wherever you place them usually, but then there's times where we do forget them or misplace them. And it's just a human trait. I mean, we can't remember or expect everything to be in its exact same spot. So time reporting, I kind of thought of that with time reporting. Some companies nowadays have a more robust time tracking system. When people clock into a process or order, and when they clock out. If one doesn't clock out, the system is able to clock the employee out as long as the proper settings are inputted. So this is where I kind of changed my view of the actual problem, because I guess the original problem was more so to do with the process of having more of a human aspect of it, having the accounting department report to the managers, who then track down their employees and they talk it out, check for disciplinary actions. But I was actually more looking at the actual process of clocking in and clocking out, or the reporting process itself, how they actually report, which is the system at hand. And one of the things that I thought about was a way to change the system is to bring an app process, considering that almost everybody now has a smartphone of some type. Or, I mean, phones have become so adapt to better technology where it lets you do a lot more things than it did before. So you can have the app trigger an alarm and a message nearing the 5 p.m. time to which the hours need to be reported. So it may also help only leave special causes that can cause any variation, and keep more of a I mean, common cause is probably like, I'll probably get to that later. But the thing is, just the process itself, I thought needed to be changed and innovated. I guess one of the things that a lot of companies are embracing, and they need to have it in their business if they are to innovate in any form. So again, I kind of took the problem in a different way, more so not from the human aspect, but from the actual technical of how to report the hours.
Okay, so Edgar, thanks for walking us through. I did enjoy reading some of the DQ responses. I kind of didn't dive in with a whole lot. I did ask a few questions about ideas on automation, but I wanted to see how the class ran with this one. And we did have some pretty strong opinions. Some were from it's all management's fault to, fire everybody who does the wrong thing. It was really interesting to see that. So from around the cohort, what kind of response did you have to what Edgar just presented to us? Did you see it that way, or did you see it differently? So, DeCalo, how about you? How did you feel about this one? Were you kind of in line with Edgar, or did you have a different idea on what to do or how to measure this issue?
I had pretty much similar ideas as Edgar's. I thought that the system was very daunting because there were so many employees in the company, and I really thought that they could use something that is more online than offline for time tracking. Um, I made an example with a fingerprint system, yeah, which works pretty much the same as clocking in and out whenever an employee would go in and out of the workplace. So it kind of keeps the data online and in a cloud. So there's no way you could lose the data. It's not on paper and stuff.
Okay, good put. And a fingerprint system of badging in or badging out or clocking in, clocking out, that's great. It would certainly lend itself to less compromise and probably a very dependable system as long as it doesn't go down.
Hello, everyone.
I'm sorry, Judith? Okay, I thought Judith was serving something up. Okay, who had an opposing view? Hello? Okay, I think we might have some open mics here, picking up some voices doing other things. Let's hear from an opposing view.
Hello.
Okay, Judith, are you trying to talk to the class? I can't tell. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask again for any opposing views. A few people did have DQs where they had different feelings about how people were held accountable or maybe other ideas for automation. Let's hear a few of those ideas, please.
Hello?
Yeah, Jay, you're up.
Yeah, this is Jay. Well, of course, I'm in the military, so my outlook on this is going to be a little different. I mean, when you come to work for this company, you should know the standards and the rules and regulations, and if you can't abide or follow by those, that we either there's disciplinary actions or we just get rid of you.
Yeah, I did see that in your response. You talked about a progressive system where, or 1, 2, or 3 strike system, and that's something a couple other folks resonated with. Let me ask a couple other people. Let me see. Who haven't we talked to tonight? Megan, from the example, what kind of measurements might you be able to derive to decide how big of a problem this really is?
Well, from a quality standpoint, working in quality, I'm going to say I have to collect enough data and then go from there to figure out how big of a problem it is. For me, it's not something that we focus on a lot at our company, I guess, because, me being salary, that's something I don't have to worry about as much, whereas the hourly employees at our company do. But we are actually in the process of eliminating a situation like this because right now they do fill out timesheets each week, and sometimes they are late in getting those in, whether it's due to something occurs or anything like that. But we're actually going to badges, so they will use their badges to clock in and out.
Okay, that's a great way to control it, and also to gather some perhaps more meaningful, more pertinent data. I do appreciate your serving that up. One more person. Let's talk to Dave. So Dave, your opinion of the issue and how you might go ahead and measure the value or the frequency of the problem to decide what to do with it. Could you share your thoughts on that with us, please?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen both sides of this. So where I currently work, we have a problem where they have badges that they swipe into a time clock on, and so what will end up happening is if they're late, they'll go over and look at the time on the time clock and then not swipe their card because they don't want to get penalized, and then they'll sign a missed punch log so they still get paid for the time. And we've caught them doing that on video, and so we're looking at a more robust system where you can't even get in the building, or you can get in the building, but you can't get all the way in without swapping or using a card or a fingerprint or something like that. Our corporate office uses ID badges. They have turnstiles, so you can't go in or out of the building unless you go through a turnstile with your badge, and then it logs everybody in and out.
And that's a pretty good belt and suspender system. You're controlling access, and you're getting absolute accountability, and there's very little room for compromise unless you can find a way to jump over the turnstile. So that's probably a good thing. Any other thoughts on this DQ before we go ahead and move on? I know that I did ask a couple of folks their ideas on automation. So from the example, again, they're intentionally vague to try to drive some critical thinking, throughout the class, which is a good thing, I think. Any ideas on automation, a way to better foolproof this? I think we heard about swiping badges and, a badge that gets you through a turnstile. I personally experienced RFID, where when you enter the building at certain points, as you walk, you listen for an audible beep, and it means that the RFID of your badge has been picked up, and you can proceed, and that's your attendance pretty much. Any other ideas or any other experience anybody like to share? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on a little bit. Let's go ahead and kind of track ourselves. Where are we? I think we are exactly where we should be in class currently. I did see that the bulk of the week 3 assignments have been submitted. If you haven't had an opportunity, please take that opportunity. And just for absolute clarity, what I'm offering here is that we're not going to grade what's been submitted, although we do have to verify the presence of it. But I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to tune it up and present your best and final offering in week 5. And certainly if you want to get any feedback from your peers in the cohort to make yours a better and better and better presentation, you're welcome to do so. So let's go ahead and think along those lines. So to date, we've talked about a number of issues as they relate to quality systems management. And tonight we're going to find ourselves into how to establish and refine performance measurement systems. This one's a little bit slide heavy, but that's okay. We're going to hit the high points. We're going to accentuate some of the more pertinent sections for you. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap up the class tonight with an around the room and kind of a status check like we like to do. So tonight being week 3, we're going to talk about formal, informal, performance-based measures, balanced scorecard approach, selecting and collecting data, developing measures that tell the health of an organization or process, performance measures. Also, we're going to talk about some goal-setting activities and ideas that you might want to take with you. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about composite indicators and indices and weighted factors, and then wrap it up with a little bit on multi-level segmentation. Okay, so let me go ahead and switch pages on here. We'll go ahead and get into the slide deck, and then probably halfway through, we'll take a quick 5-minute break as we do, and then we'll finish it from there. So let me get into week number 3. Okay. And just for, that was not week number 3. Here we go. Okay, just for clarity, to see a little bit more information on the balanced scorecard, if you look under week number 3 in the course materials, you'll find a really good example of a balanced scorecard and some things you probably want to bring over into your projects. So let me go ahead and get back to the slide deck. And tonight, again, we're going to be talking about performance-based management. And we're going to talk about DQ summary, which we've already done. We are rather light this time with only 1 DQ and only 1 volunteer. Next week, we will have 2 DQs and at least 2 volunteers we haven't heard from yet. I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get on it. And cohort, in my experience, I've got to say that learning is a participation sport. And I know some people aren't comfortable speaking up, raising their hand, or presenting in different formats, but let's try to break those discomfort levels. I think it helps everybody learn. So for tonight, our objectives, again, are balanced scorecard, establishing indices, and approaches to establishing a system where one may not already exist, or fine-tuning one that does. So measurement systems, formal and informal approaches and characteristics. So an informal system has no specific theory or design organizational approach. It's evolutionary. It's based on what's been organic and come beforehand. It's what you do to survive and to get by. It might not be all that intense or creativity provoking. It may be very basic. It's usually driven by external factors. Financial, typically primary category of measurement. It's often about the bottom line in an informal system and not a whole lot more. Small businesses, out of the need to remain viable and not spend all of their funds on charting and folks to do that, often have very informal systems, which are highly dependent on personal experience and preferences of managers. In this case, a manager can have probably a little bit more influence than they would in a larger company where they have more capacity to have a more formal system. So one might say, why not just have informal systems? Well, more formal systems can drive improvement, and they can chart health, and they can generate ideas for growing the business in ways that an informal system really can't. So formal systems, what's that all about? Well, formal systems are based on industry-accepted theories and practices. They're normally built around prescribed approaches and formats. And very often they'll require some form of formal training or at least an expert knowledge to make sure that we're looking at the right things in the right formatting. Deployment of the measurement approaches in more than one area of the organization. It's not about one bottom line, it's about multiple processes and how they interact. Also, a formal system requires dedicated resources and organizational commitments. So a little more informal performance measurement system characteristics. They're usually deployed throughout the enterprise with established formats, theories, and tools. I see that a lot of the folks in the cohort are working for some major industry and major services, and I'm going to bet that the folks who work at UTC in Phoenix, Arizona probably have at least some commonality in their performance metrics with UTC in other locations, maybe in Connecticut or California or other places. That way, everybody's not speaking a different language. Am I far off base on that, Cameron or Edgar? Actually, Cameron's not with us.
No, sir, you're pretty much right on it.
Okay.
We actually have like a big intranet that we use to communicate, or even between some departments, but we even have, funny enough, a huge list of abbreviations that we use throughout the whole company.
Yep, I've experienced the same thing. It's almost a matter of survival, knowing what all those acronyms mean. But yeah, as Cameron Edgar kind of reaffirmed there, larger companies that have multiple branches will typically have very similarly formatted, if not identically formatted, performance measurement systems. So as you go from building to building, place to place, segment to segment, you can readily understand the health of the processes and services. Formal performance measurement system characteristics also include systematically deployed attributes with alignment and integration vertically and horizontally in the organization. So what that's saying is there's normally a tie-in between peer organizations, or at least a way to understand and stitch them together and see how they impact one another. It's just not just about one singular thing. Incorporates regular reviews and actions based on data analysis, and typically incorporates and fosters systems thinking. Formal systems require training and dedicated resources and technology as well as funding. Strategy-based and derived from strategic planning. So here's a really good model for performance measurement development, and this is one you might want to bookmark. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It's perhaps a little bit intense as far as feeding your MVPs, but it is one that's worth going back to at any point if you like. So I'm going to blow it up a little bit. We're going to go over some of the highlights of it. So you'll find that it sort of follows the DMAIC model. It's sort of logical that way. So let's go ahead and talk about what that really means. So we're going to have customers and stakeholders. These are people who need a service or a product, or they'll fund something that's going to make them a profit. customers and stakeholders' input and management priorities and decisions feed strategic planning, goal setting, performance, and resource allocation, as well as establishing and updating measures and goals. Establishing and updating measurement performances and goals includes establishing accountability for those goals. That's important. It's important to know who has, who's got the responsibility and authority for the goals that have been articulated. Establishing accountability for performance leads to measuring performance, which will include data collection and reporting, analyzing and reviewing performance data, and ultimately evaluating and utilizing the performance information and feeding that back to the customers and stakeholders, and the whole loop starts again. So let's spend a moment. I'm going to blow it up even more if it'll let me, and it will. Measuring performance as far as data and collection and reporting. This is what we're going to spend a moment on, because you're going to find your MVPs are built around this kind of foundation. So when you're measuring performance, including data collection and reporting, you have a clear identification of your data sources. You know where your information is coming from, and it's proven to have high fidelity.
Wow.
I'm sorry, somebody have an input? Nope, okay, just stray noise. Information systems are designed to support data collection and reporting. You may find yourself conducting pilot tests to make sure that you're able to retrieve data in a way that's economical and yet effective. Automated or manual requests are used for periodic updates, and we've talked a little bit in the forums and a little bit in other subjects about automation. Wherever possible, automate. That way you have a non-recurring expense that's producing an automated, predictable, reliable product, particularly when it comes to performance measuring systems. Data entry, tabulation, summarization methods are documented for each measure. This way, if your chart maker of all chart makers moves on, gets promoted, or whatever, whoever comes in behind them will have sort of a playbook on how to recreate that particular performance data metric. You'll also have data definition for common measures, and you'll follow them. You'll understand reliability, timeliness, accuracy, rapid access, and confidentiality wherever necessary, and ensure those are addressed. Again, looking at what a lot of folks do for a living in here, you probably have performance measures that are at least somewhat proprietary, so it's important to respect that and protect your own interests and know your audience, which is another point that's sort of holistic in this particular degree program, is knowing your audience and making sure that what you're presenting is audience appropriate. So again, definitely bookmark this page. There's a whole lot of really good information in here. And just remember that it does pretty much follow the DMAIC model. You're defining, measuring, analyzing, and ultimately getting it out to your customer base and going around again. Okay, so let's talk about a successful system. Not just any system, but the successful one that you may build, or you may have already built. So some of the components you will find in most every successful system include a strategic plan, an identification of the business processes that are critical to your success, an articulation of your stakeholder needs. Your stakeholder could be customers or internal codependent business entities. Senior management or senior leadership involvement. Employee involvement, that one's big, and we spent a little bit of time on that last week, and we'll probably spend a little more time on it next week. When I say employee involvement, make sure that those who are being measured understand why and how they contribute to it. That's huge when it comes to employee involvement and productivity. Also, a successful system will have accountability for measures, conceptual framework, such as a balanced scorecard, and communication, as well as a sense of urgency. So when I say communication, most companies have gotten out of just posting a couple of performance measures on the wall. They have regular multi-tiered walks, or they have Gemba walks, or they have regular predictable meetings where they will go ahead and go over performance measures weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, what have you. So let me ask some of our friends in the military, when you're reviewing some of your performance measures, what frequency is used? So let me ask that question of Sam. So Sam, I'm assuming you've got some performance measures that kind of oversee what you do in the military?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is there a specific frequency that you look at them, or does it appear random? What are what's your experience with that?
So we look at them not randomly, quarterly as far as the shop I work in. But if we're talking about individualistic performance, so my performance, I'm evaluated annually and I'm rated against my peers. But when looking at my shop, when comparing it to other shops, other command language programs around the Army, we do that review quarterly at Corps and at ForceCom. And then that feedback is provided to DA, and we adjust fire biannually at our command language council meetings. So
Sam, do you think that review quarterly is frequently enough, or would you like to see it more often or less often, do you think?
When I came into this program last November, and there was no review put in place at all. This is something that we just started, and we had our second one. This is our second quarter under review, and I don't think it's enough. I think we probably should, right now, because it's in its infancy, we should probably be implementing it monthly until the divisions and the brigades get their programs in order. And this program is evolving right now, and we're kind of in the walk phase of this new program. So yeah, I definitely think we should be doing it monthly.
And Sam makes a great point there. He's in the walk phase, and they're hoping to get to the run or fly phase. Initially, with reviews, you'll find them more frequent until everybody gets it. They understand why the reviews are there. They understand what actions are being driven by the reviews and the performance metrics that are being reviewed. And again, to use the word organically too much, organically, those get-togethers may lose efficiency if you do them too often, like having a meeting for the sake of a meeting. But as the performance measurement systems mature, you may find you're having them slightly less frequently, to a point where they're driving the kind of action that is trackable, traceable, and effective without appearing just rote, not just having a meeting because people like to have meetings. Okay, so that's talking about communication, a sense of urgency and frequency. There are some formal approaches. There's more than one, all kinds you can choose from. However, most of them have the basis in customer or stakeholder desires or articulation. If you really want to know what your customer wants, ask them. Don't try to guess too much. See what kind of an approach they want to use and what elements are important to them. They're quality program driven, management by objectives and strategies. Balanced scorecard may be a way to tell the story. And they're typically budget driven. However, as you get a little bit deeper into a more complex system, they'll be process driven and budget driven and performance driven. Oftentimes, in a formal approach, you'll find that they're regulatory or compliance focused, whether it be DCMA, FAA, AS 9100, whatever the regulatory oversight is. You might find that a lot of metrics are directed towards satisfying requirements of that oversight. A combination of approaches tailored to organizational circumstance. That's something you're typically going to experience when you have a formal approach. It's not just one only, it's a combination of. Quality program or mega tools driven. Does anybody in the cohort have experience with mega tools? Okay, that's not unusual. Folks typically don't. We're not going to get into that too deeply here, but once in a while somebody does, and they can offer a little bit of insight. However, let's talk about Lean Six Sigma, which is process focused, heavy on statistical analysis. As NGS likes to say, as I like to say, what gets measured gets improved. So statistics are huge, and it's fun to say multiple times. It's value added and time related. It includes theory of constraints. What's getting in the way of higher, better, or more advantageous performance? There's Baldrige, the Baldrige Award in industry. I don't know if anybody has experience with the Baldrige Award or what goes into preparing for it and what kind of smart systemic things a company or an entity would do to go for the Baldrige Award. CMMI models that use systems maturity criteria and focus on taking the organization to the next level of performance. ISO, we mentioned that a moment ago, ISO-based use of internally accepted standards. Project management, focus on measuring activities associated with PM phases. So we talked about the big Q, and this is a vernacular you hear throughout industry. Big Q is systems level focused on the entire organization or division or desired outcome, whereas little q would be the processes that lead to whatever that throughput is in the big Q. Let's talk about objective-based or strategy-based approaches. There's centralized and decentralized. It's pretty polarized there. Centralized. Strategic planning outlines the enterprise-level approaches with goals, objectives, cascading down throughout the organization. It rolls downhill, if you will, from customer, stakeholder, or senior leadership on down to the folks actually touching the product or creating the service. Decentralized. Managers at various levels establish internal objectives, strategies, and then determine performance measures. Usually common formats are used and reporting review processes are documented as well. A balanced scorecard is strategy-based. So what's a balanced scorecard? Well, a balanced scorecard is something we're going to spend time on. That's one thing a balanced scorecard is. In short, a balanced scorecard is a strategic planning and management system used to align business activities to the vision and strategy of the organization by monitoring performance against goals. This is a good page to dog ear. That's a really fine definition of the balanced scorecard. And it does achieve a balance between the different quadrants of the business or process. And typically those quadrants are financial, internal business, learning and growth, and customer. And they're all tied together through vision and strategy and kind of a check and balance system. I believe we're going to see a bigger version of this graphic in a moment or two here. Let me see. Yes, we are. So we're not going to get hung up on that one. It's a little bit small, hard to see. Balanced scorecard concept, the first known use of it was in a publication by Kaplan and Norton in 1992, and then it was further matured in 1996. Balanced scorecard approach has evolved into a strategic planning approach linked to performance measurement system. Traditional performance measurement that only focuses on external accounting, like bottom line, are obsolete or moving towards obsolescence. The balanced scorecard concept is an approach that provides a balance to the financial perspective, thus the name balanced scorecard. So why use a balanced scorecard? It seems awfully complicated, and it sort of is, if you let it be. Why use a balanced scorecard over other approaches? Because it improves organizational performance by measuring what actually matters and graphically showing why that matters. It's sort of a customer-provider relationship, and we'll see a little more of that in a moment. It increases focus on strategy and results. It aligns organizational strategy with workers on a day-to-day basis, focuses on the key drivers to future performance, improves communication of the organization's vision and strategy, and helps prioritize initiatives and projects. So let's do this. This is a pretty good halfway point, almost literally. Let's go ahead and take 5, and when we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the 4 quadrants that make up a balanced scorecard, at least the majority of balanced scorecards that exist in industry today. So let's go ahead and take 5, and I'll meet you right back here in 5 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and get restarted. I hope everybody had a nice, relaxing 5 minutes to themselves. So let's talk about the 4 original business perspectives, also known as the quadrant of a balanced scorecard. The balanced scorecard model suggests that we view the organization from 4 perspectives. You're going to see versions of this, different words, different names for it, but typically this is what you're going to experience in a balanced scorecard in 2017. Again, we view the organization from 4 perspectives, then we develop metrics, collect data, and analyze it relative to each of the perspectives. So again, we start with vision and strategy, and we go back to vision and strategy. And let's say the vision and strategy is customer. The customer may say, to achieve our vision, how should we appear to our customers? Our customers can help articulate that. They're going to set objectives and measures and targets and kind of seed initiatives. That will tie in with the vision and strategy. And in a symbiotic relationship, learning and growth. To achieve our vision that we now have from vision and strategy and customer, we need to understand how we will sustain our ability to change and improve. And again, we're going to articulate that through objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives. Internal business processes to satisfy our stakeholders and customers. What business processes must we excel at? What must we learn and grow and excel at? That ties in with our vision and strategy. Again, we're going to use objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives to go ahead and articulate that. And finally, financial. Nothing happens without financial. To succeed financially, how should we appear to our stakeholders, to our customers? And we'll have, you guessed it, objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives to articulate each one of those areas. And this was adapted from the Balanced Scorecard by Kaplan and Norton. So again, there are relationships. It's kind of like when we talk about things that are aligned horizontally and vertically. The customer perspective alone isn't enough to run the business. Neither is the internal business process or the learning and growth or the financial. None of those alone can achieve business and process health. You need some of each of those, and typically there are measurements within those quadrants that you can articulate pretty readily. So let's talk a little bit more about those four quadrants. So we're talking about financial up here. We're going to talk about what must we do to create sustainable economic value. What's going to keep us or make us more profitable? Internal business processes to satisfy our stakeholders, our customers. What must be our levels of productivity, efficiency, and quality? Learning and growth. Again, that's a quadrant that we've just looked at, learning and growth down here. How does our employee performance management system, including feedback to employees, support high performance? Are we training folks in the right areas? Are they performing at a level that's going to allow them to grow and the company to grow? And finally, and perhaps folks would argue most importantly, customer. What do our customers require from us, and how are we doing according to those requirements? So CRM is something we've talked about a little bit. And in CRMs, we do identify areas of perceived need and perceived strength. Without customer, there is no process or product to be had. Without any process or product to be had, there essentially is no business. So it starts and ends with the customer. Even though we find them at the bottom of this chart, I would argue that everything starts and ends with the customer. So let's talk a little bit more about the measurements in the Balanced Scorecard. Again, we're at our four quadrants: financial, customer, internal business, learning, and growth. So generic measurements. If your task is to go ahead and create or enhance measurements for those four different quadrants, this is a great page to have bookmarks. It's going to take you right where you need to be. So when we're going to go ahead and articulate financial measurements, we're going to be talking about return of capital employed, economic value added, sales growth, cash flow. Any one or many of those will go ahead and tell us about our financial measurements and the health of our financial status. Customer, what kind of measurements can we use to articulate the customer perspective? Customer satisfaction, retention, acquisition, profitability, market share. Does anybody in the cohort interface with a customer in a way that they could tell us about a customer perspective measurement that they use? Okay, I'm hearing none. One that I do hear from time to time from the cohorts, when people are selling a good, you know, a tangible hands-on thing. Let's say you work for Acme Anvil Company. A customer measure is repeat orders. Makes sense. If your customer's coming back and coming back for more, then you know that the customer perspective is in good health, and that's certainly measurable. Internal business process perspective. How are you going to measure that? That one seems a little bit far out, but it's not really. It includes measurements along the internal value chain for innovation, measuring how well the company identifies future needs and gives options to that customer. Operations, measurements of cost, cycle time, and quality. Post-sale service, measures for warranty, repair, and treatment of defects and returns. And then finally, some of the measures that one would use for articulating the learning and growth perspective, those would include people, employee retention, training skills, morale. Systems, measure availability of critical real-time information needed for frontline employees. So typically what you'll see here is companies do measure employee retention, and it'll certainly prompt an organization to action if you find that your employee retention is going in the wrong direction. You're losing employees at a pace that's above your average or your control group that you may have identified previously. And that's articulating the perspective of learning and growth. So key implementation success factors. First, foremost, and strategically placed at the top of this list, obtaining executive sponsorship and commitment. Make sure you're satisfying that sponsorship and keeping moving in the right direction. Involving a broad base of leaders, managers, and employees in the development of the scorecard. Choosing the right scorecard champion, someone who has a good understanding of the business, the kind of organizational skills, and I would say the longevity to build it and keep it alive and keep it going. Beginning interactive, that's two-way, at least, communications first. Viewing the scorecard as a long-term journey rather than a one-and-done project. And finally, another implementation success factor is getting outside help if needed. Benchmark other areas of your business or other businesses, if they'll allow you, on how you can implement. So here's a really great chart. And I'm not going to hit every point of this. I don't think we have the time this evening to do that, nor do I think the cohort would want me to do that. So please go ahead and bookmark this one. It's a more intense version of something that you'll be creating in time. So let's break it down into elements and make a little bit more sense to us than what we see in front of us. Again, we'll go back to our four perspectives: financial perspective, customer perspective, internal perspective, learning and growth perspective. So let's pick one. Let's go to the customer perspective. So customer perspective, offer products and services that are consistent, timely, and low cost. What's our strategy for that? Our strategy for that and some of our measurables for that would be low cost customer satisfaction, world-class, enhancing the brand. So what are some of the objectives that go with offering products and services that are consistent, timely, low cost? Some of our objectives may be low-cost manufacturing, world-class delivery, high customer satisfaction. And on your balanced scorecard, how are you going to measure these things? Well, if you're talking low-cost manufacturing, you're going to be measuring man-hours per unit, perhaps. If you're talking about high customer satisfaction, you're talking about market feedback. What is your customer telling you about the quality of your product or service? Reinforce brand image. Sales volume can help you articulate that on your balanced scorecard. And then finally, in a balanced scorecard, in this example anyway, you're going to have an action plan. In this case, the initiative is weekly monitoring of, and then we'll go back, man-hours per unit, which articulate your low-cost manufacturing, which are satisfying your customer perspective for low-cost, customer satisfaction, world-class, and brand enhancement. There's a whole lot to see here, and every one of these methods kind of are going across horizontally back and forth for each of the different perspectives. So in short, the strategy map sets up which perspective we're talking about and what are some of the key elements, sets up what some of the objectives of those elements are, sets up what kind of measurables you may develop, and a recommendation of how frequently you may want to develop them. Your mileage will vary, your project will change, and from team to team, cohort to cohort, business to business, Your balanced scorecard may not be articulating the same values, but they'll have the same kind of flow. So there's absolute understanding. So do bookmark this page. It's a little bit intense, but as you work in your MVPs and you want to get in there and go ahead and articulate something about the financial perspective, this is a great playbook. It really is. So the balanced scorecard strategy map, it has kind of a neat flow to it. It has symbiotic relationships to it, much like when we were talking about the 4 quadrants. Our perspectives, they're here again. We're going to talk about these perspectives most of the night. Financial perspective can be articulated as improved shareholder value. Customer value perspective. Again, we're going to talk about the things we've already talked about: customer acquisition, customer retention, return customer volume, customer satisfaction. Internal perspective, building the franchise, increasing the value. Learning and growth perspective, motivated and prepared workforce. So what's neat about this chart is what's a little counterintuitive, but thankfully they put arrows on them, and I always recommend arrows on your charts to direct the audience to what you need them to understand, like what direction is good, what direction is bad. In this case, we're talking about how the perspectives can feed each other in a strategy map. Learning and growth perspective includes a motivated and prepared workforce that directly feeds the internal perspective of building, increasing, achieving excellence, being a good corporate citizen. When we're doing these things, we are gaining customer value. As we gain customer value in price, quality, time, service, brand image, that grows our financial perspective, which helps us further build a franchise, increase customer value, increase cost structure, and improve asset utilization. It's another good one to bookmark. I don't know that you'll be using it much in your MVP, but understand the arrows kind of set up the flow and help you understand that even though there are interrelationships here that will skip the perspective quadrants, you can read it from the ground up, starting with the people actually working the processes, to the internal perspective, to the customer, and finally to the financial perspective. So let's talk about a department level scorecard example. Here's one. Again, we see them laid out in 4 quadrants, slightly different here. You may lay out a department level scorecard that talks about how do we look to management. What's our business value, our goals and measures, and how to articulate? What must we excel at? And how do our internal processes get us there? Are we working efficiently? How can we continue to improve and create value, which is a way to articulate future readiness? What's our goal? Perhaps our goal is 95% mission readiness, and our measures will tell us if we're achieving that 95% mission readiness. What can we do to meet the future needs of goals? We need to satisfy the end user, the customer, the stakeholders. We also need to remember that internal efficiency and customer satisfaction equals service success. So again, business value, you're going to set up your goals and how you're measuring them. Internal processes, goals and how you're measuring them. Future readiness, goals, how you're measuring them. Same with user orientation. In the end, we're talking about what technologies and business opportunities and challenges are emerging. How are we measuring them and measuring the health of them? Okay, that was a little bit of Dilbert that you can read if you wish on your own time. Scorecard, potential pitfalls and criticisms. If we have a lack of a well-defined strategy, we could say that the balanced scorecard relies on well-defined strategy and understanding of linkages between strategic objectives and metrics. Without this foundation, the implementation could fail. So if the balanced scorecard has a well-defined strategy and understanding of the linkages, then we will have a well-defined strategy. Another potential pitfall or criticism is there's too much focus on lagging measures. Well, focusing on only lagging measures may cause a lack of priority or opportunity for the leading measures. However, we have to respect and take into account the lagging measures because they can become a predictive indicator for future performance. It's important to note. Use of generic metrics. Don't just copy metrics from another entity. Identify the measures that apply to your strategy, your process, your service, and the competitive position you wish to be in. And finally, another pitfall or criticism is be on the lookout for self-serving leaders. There will be leaders in your professional lives whose goal is to achieve a desired result in order to obtain a bonus or other self-reward, and maybe only articulate the positive sides of the business, which is fine as long as you're balancing, as in a balanced scorecard, what's going well and what's not going well. Given it a balanced look, a balanced scorecard creates value and drives action. So we spent quite a bit of time on balanced scorecard. We spent a good amount of time on the quadrants. We've talked about some of the pitfalls and a lot of the benefits. So let's go ahead and recap. Balanced scorecard benefits, they help align key performance measures with strategy at all levels of an organization. Strategic initiatives that follow best practices methodologies that cascade throughout the entire organization are typically found on balanced scorecards. Methodology facilitates communication and understanding of business goals and strategies at all levels of an organization and provides a graphic way to look at how those needs are being met. Balanced scorecard transforms an organization's mission statement and strategic plan, which you'll find in the middle of those 4 quadrants if we were to flip back a few pages, from a passive document into marching orders or a living document for the organization to follow, to find guidance from on a daily basis. Balanced scorecard enables executives or leaders to truly execute the strategies by identifying what should be done and measured. By identifying what's going well, how do we replicate, how do we do more of that, and also how do we address what's not going so well. The note on the bottom says to date, some form of balanced scorecard is used by nearly 60% of Fortune 500 companies. I would argue it's probably closer to 75% now. There are very few suppliers who I've visited worldwide who don't have at least a rudimentary form of balanced scorecard. Does anybody in the cohort have any additional experience with balanced scorecards in their business or their service? Okay, we're a little quiet tonight. That happens. So let's talk about how does this dovetail with your MVP? Why is this important? Well, it's important to your business because the balanced scorecard is becoming the norm in business and how to tell the story of the health of your product and service business. But here's potential utilization of the scorecard approach to your MVP. This is important. The balanced scorecard is useful in guiding data collection planning for the current state, which of course is the measurement phase of DMAIC. It helps determine the cause and effect relationships of proposed MVP solutions across the 4 quadrants in the analysis phase of DMAIC. And this is why we spent so much time on the 4 quadrants and talking about how they interplay. Consider short and long-term control measures aligned to each of the quadrants for a comprehensive set of monitoring and control measures. If you're not taking all 4 into consideration, you may find that by concentrating on 1 or 2 or 3 of the 4 quadrants, the 4th or 3rd or 2nd may suffer. Approach them in a balanced framework. And finally, portray results using the 4 quadrants. It's a great way to tell the story. Okay, we have balanced scorecarded ourselves and quadranted ourselves right up to the edge of the PowerPoint presentation for tonight. So in the very near future, we're going to talk about composite indexes, dashboards. We're going to talk about graphic display, why that's important, how you can appeal to your audience better, the review process. We're also going to talk a little bit about reasons that measurement systems fail. Not everyone is a success story, but with a little bit of hard work and critical thinking, they can be. We're also going to spend a little more time on DQs. The teams will work in the background on the team assignment for week 5. We're going to go ahead and go over that in a moment, since I think pretty much all of us have week 3 turned in. Let me freeze screen so I don't make you dizzy dancing around in here and have to relog on. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, here we are. So for week 5, let's go to the syllabus very quickly here. For week 5, which is not next week, but the week after, team assignment 2 will be due, and team assignment 1 and 2 will be presented by the teams. So team assignment 2, as you will find here in the syllabus, is using the neighborhood pizza case study updated for this course. Each of our 3 teams will develop a plan to establish a formal and comprehensive performance measurement system for the neighborhood pizza business. The team may use one or more of the Excel worksheets provided in the supplemental materials. I do encourage you to do it that way, unless you really want to get creative, and that's okay too. You can use worksheets derived from the Harvard Pocket Mentor text if you have that, or formats from other sources. If using formats in Excel, Word, or other software, transfer it to PowerPoint. See case study handout for further instructions. The plan should include, at a minimum, the following components, and this is very important. First slide will be team information, who all the players are on the team, and what the title of the team is. 1 to 2 slides on identifying the approach and the major steps and timelines to establish a performance management system for our pizza shop. 1 to 4 slides developing notational objectives, KPIs, and supporting performance measures. Describe the data to be collected, how it's going to be collected, how it would be measured to include targets and goals and frequency. There should be a mix of leading and lagging indicators in there. In fact, I insist on leading and lagging indicators in there. It can't all be in the past. So this is usually the point where some of the teams get hung up saying, as far as describing the data to be collected and how it would be measured to include targets and goals and frequency. Again, you're going to find the case study a little bit intentionally vague. Get creative. Some of this can be a work of fiction assembled in a way that articulates that we've grasped what we've learned to date. So it will be light on detail. Make up the detail. Just make sure we're arranging it in a way that articulates what we've been learning all along. See Excel worksheet number 8 as an example of how to satisfy this particular part of the requirement of the assignment. 1 to 2 slides, develop at least one chart or graph for one of the performance measures listed in item 3. So what we're going to go ahead and do is you may talk about the KPIs and how you're going to gather them up, but you're definitely going to present in chart form or graph form at least one of those KPIs. Show an example of a composite index using a weighting factor. And then finally, list the key lessons learned during this class or any concerns or issues. Again, as we said in week 1, I do respectfully request your feedback. The course was retooled a short time ago, and I think the flow is pretty good. It's considerably better than it had been, but there's always room for improvement. And typically that improvement comes from the student body who hasn't seen this and hasn't experienced this multiple times and may become a little bit blind to the forest for the trees. So at this point, I want to ask, does anybody have any go-backs for what we've covered tonight or where to find other materials? I am going to go ahead and bounce back to some of the supporting materials while we talk. Okay, so the case study itself is right in here under course materials, neighborhood pizza case study. And it's pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive, but again, you are going to find some of it ambiguous, which may be a source of frustration, but don't let it be. Let it be a source of creativity instead. Just make sure you're assembling whatever fictional attributes you bring to it in a way that does articulate what we've been learning to date. Okay, let's go back for a moment here. So what else do we have? Let's see, a balanced scorecard. For a deeper look at the balanced scorecard that we talked about tonight, and this is really a very good template. I may have borrowed from this a few times, even back when I was getting my MVP completed, back when I got my master's. It's coming up slowly, unfortunately, but it is coming up, so have no fear. Okay, what's really neat about this balanced scorecard template, it has multiple chunks of information in it. You can go along the bottom. Here's the introduction page. Talks about titles and purposes and templates. You're going to find the process inputs checklist, If you need to develop a timeline, here's a great primer on how to. Team formation, how to organize a team, core team checklist, establish goals, themes, strategic map, measurement definition, measurement summary. This is really, really a strong resource of information packed into one handy Excel file, and I do invite you and encourage you to use them as you go forward in your MVPs. And again, that is found right over here in the balance scorecard underneath week 3. So if you spend a few minutes in that balance scorecard, and I would ask you to do so, you'll certainly sharpen the edge of what we've covered tonight. It's a bit of a dry subject, but when you're putting together your MVPs, you're going to see how it really gels. Okay. So while we're on this page, the webinar, there was not one for last week. That was quite literally the first time I'd ever run a course on an iPad. I'm glad I had the iPad because I never want to cancel a class. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to the cohort in any way. So we try to avoid that at all costs. But tonight, computer's behaving. Again, I will take your recommendations for a really good, dependable laptop if anybody wants to email me a recommendation. But I will have this class posted this evening, and there'll be a webinar transcription that will follow that up in short order. Okay. So let me reiterate something I said earlier in the class. Learning is a participation sport. Had some really nice participation tonight from Edgar and a couple of other folks. And for next week, we do have 2 DQs to cover. And I'd like to see how early we can get some volunteers to cover those DQs, perhaps folks who have not spoken up in the class. We're a small but modest and very focused cohort, but I'd like to hear a little more participation from some of the quieter folks in the class. We want to hear your voice. You know, we want to hear your opinion. And I think that'll help cement the kind of learning that we do here. So this is the part of the evening where I go ahead and virtually go around the class and ask if anybody would like some follow-up or closing thoughts or anything else they'd like to share. So Sam, anything that we can revisit for you or anything you'd like to share with the class tonight?
No, sir. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. How about Ron?
Nope. I'm good today. Thank you.
Okay. Megan?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Matthew, you'll see in the transcription that I do apologize for not having the webinar and the transcription from last week, and hopefully this week more than makes up for it. Larry? Okay. Larry's a little camera shy at the moment. Judith?
No issues, sir.
Okay. Jay?
I'm good except for that balance scorecard. It looks a little intimidating. So.
It is a little bit, but like we are showing over here, this example here, if you spend a little time in it, it will gel and see how it fits together. And if that's still not working for you, talk to someone in the cohort or get a hold of me and we'll find some other examples that'll help nail it down. It is a little bit high, but once you start building it, it does make sense. It's really a neat tool.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Excuse me, Dave?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Dave, stay good. Edgar, thank you again, Edgar, for covering us this evening with peer review.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
All right. And DeCarlo, you get the final word tonight. Lucky you. And, nope.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for being here. Let's think about upping the participation just a touch. And I really love to have 3 or 4 volunteers for doing the peer review for the 2 DQs that we'll be due. And as we do, I'm going to go ahead and send out a bit of a summary and a definition of deliverables to come. They are found in the syllabus, but I do like to recap the class whenever that's possible. So, hey, everybody, tonight, thanks for being here. Thanks for being patient. And let's do it again next week. On that note, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, sir.